Good morning. Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gredick, your host. Delighted to have you with us on this beautiful day. And we have one of the most special programs of all time this morning because our guest, John Callaway, is in studio. John, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Steve.
Personal note of personal privilege here is that when I came to West Georgia full-time in 87, John reached out to me. I think it was in 88. I came late 87, invited me to be part of the Bremen Rotary Club, and I was always very grateful for that. And it's count him as a good friend, and it was really wonderful because my uncle in Lawrenceville in Gwinnett County, WLAW, interviewed Wayne Shackelford, who was originally from Carrollton,
right,
for many years. And then I came to Harrelson, and there I was with John Callaway, and it just all seemed to click. John has a long resume, and I am going to go through it, but we're really today going to talk mainly about herds and heritage, the history of Georgia's cattle industry. John is currently president of Georgia Cattlemen's Association.
No, not currently, past president.
Past president. Okay, that's all right. But after a 30-year career with the UGA, he moved the family back to the family farm outside of Hogansville, which has been in the family farm for well over 100 years. And his wife Marcia are there, and they've concentrated on breeding registered semi-Angus cattle to sell other producers, both seed stock and commercial. They have a bull and female sale at their farm every November, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and they also raise hay and timber. He loves giving back to the industry that's been so good to them and his family. So moving back home to Hogansville in 2001, he's acquired a whole lot of volunteer jobs. So it's past president, right, of the Georgia Cattle. Okay, yeah. We'll update that. Chairman of the Georgia Farm Bureau Beef Commodity Committee, member of Governor Sonny Perdue's Ag Advisory Commission, member of Congressman Lynn Westmoreland's Ag Advisory Committee, vice chairman of the Georgia National Fairgrounds and Agri-Center Authority, chairman of the Georgia Agricultural Commodity Commission for Beef, local farm bureau of the Troup County Farm Bureau, chairman of the steering committee for the Georgia Cattlemen's Foundation History Book, and treasurer of the Current Cemetery Association, and beloved and revered by so many people in the West Georgia area. So it's really an honor to have John here.
Thank you, Steve. You're kind. Too kind.
Well, we're going to take, let me tell you what John's been working on for the last 3.5 years. Then we're going to take a quick commercial break and dig deep into it without interruption. But for 3.5 years now, he's been working on this book, Herds and Heritage, and the History of Georgia's Cattle Industry. He's worked with author Jackie Kennedy of LaGrange through the Georgia Cattlemen's Foundation, and a lot of support from the West Georgia area. It's a 340-page book, full color, coffee table book. For people like me, that's the only kind of book.
You bet.
It rolled off the press just this past February. It's now available for purchase, and it traces the first cattle to arrive in what is now Georgia to the year 1521 all the way to present-day Georgia. Before we go to the break, just for non-agricultural types, and that would be one of those, agriculture is the number one industry in Georgia, correct?
Correct.
And cattle farming is huge in West Georgia, correct?
It is.
How big? I mean, what's a good perspective for someone like me to have in terms of cattle farming agriculture?
You know, I should be able to give you that figure. I can tell you that as part of the Beef Commission, we receive state checkoff dollars for every animal that's sold in the state, and it's somewhere around 500,000 that are sold every year, and we get $1 per head on that for that state checkoff, as do they get $1 per head on the national checkoff. But I guess if you took those numbers and multiplied them times whatever an average animal would sell for these days, it could be 500, it could be 800, it could be 1,000. So multiply that times that, and you got a significant number of dollars that the industry does certainly put into the economy of Georgia.
Well, it's certainly the number one industry, and yet, or maybe the top.
Well, the agriculture is number one, certainly.
Yeah. Well, we as we go through the book, we'll learn more about this and the history of the cattle industry here in Georgia, and about agriculture in general. And we're very excited to have John Callaway, past president of Georgia Cattlemen's Association. We'll be back with more right after this.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
As a believer in the power of education, we are called to set the standard by shaping and empowering the minds of future generations through quality education. Oak Mountain Academy embraces this philosophy, which is why my children attend this prestigious school. I am elated to serve on the OMA Board of Trustees, where together we prepare students and remind them to trust and believe in the power to transform the world. I'm Dr. Brian Bain, inviting you to celebrate our 60-year legacy of academic excellence. Visit us at oakmountain.us.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gredick, your host. Delighted to have the past president of Georgia Cattlemen's Association, agricultural agent, 30-year career in West Georgia. We're talking about the new book, Herds and Heritage, A History of Georgia's Cattle Industry. And before we get into details, you worked with author Jackie Kennedy of LaGrange through the Georgia Cattlemen's Foundation. Tell us briefly a little bit about Jackie, who she is.
Jackie grew up on a dairy farm in Troup County. Her dad was Jack Smith, and I think he milked cows until somewhere in the 80s, and then got out of the dairy business, changed over to beef cattle and a hay operation. Plus, he was the Ford tractor dealer in LaGrange. So Jackie grew up around cattle, mainly dairy cattle, and then in later years beef cattle. She and her sons now still have beef cattle. I think about her dad. The first tractor I ever bought, I bought it from Jack Smith in LaGrange, and it was a Ford tractor, but it was painted yellow. It was an old DOT tractor, 5,000 Ford tractor, and I'll always be indebted for Jack giving me a good deal on that old tractor. I wish I had it today.
Well, you say that when she began work and the research began, that the first cattle to arrive in what is now Georgia came here in 1521. Correct. That's surprising.
It's, obviously the Spanish came over here and settled, what's now Florida and South Georgia, and with them they brought cattle, and those old, we call them piney woods cattle, or cracker cattle. They were the beginning of obviously some of them are ancestors, you might say, to the cattle that are still around today. Obviously, the British cattle that came over later on in the 1800s, such as Angus and Hereford, had their impact. But those old cracker cattle or piney woods cattle, they had a lot of longevity to them, and they've lasted. And there are actually some people that are still breeding those cattle today, but they don't have much of a place in today's industry. But there are still a few of them around.
Well, tell us about Georgia in terms of what obviously Carroll County herd are very conducive to raising cattle. Now, why is that? Temperature, or the ability to grow or to have pasture, or what is it?
We can grow forage in Georgia for at least 10 months out of the year. And you compare that to the Dakotas or Nebraska or Idaho or Montana, we have a tremendous advantage there. Now, that's not to say that the grass that they go out there may be a little better than what we produce here. Our old fescue is while it's a cool season, perennial and grows almost year round, it still has its drawbacks. We have an endophyte that gets in that fescue and hurts animal production, and and then of course the heat of the summertime is probably our biggest detriment to the cattle industry because of the heat and humidity. But I'll still take the southeast over some of those other places for my own cattle operation.
And we're talking about the history from 1521 onward. It's just like, we see the pictures in Carrollton where the cotton was taken downtown.
Yeah.
Obviously, now it's coffee. But anyway, similarly, cattle used to be a even bigger industry than it is now, or was it smaller back then? How does now compare with then?
Surprisingly, if you look at the number of cattle in Georgia today, I think the estimates are around 1 million head. And if you go back to Civil War times, the inventory of cattle in Georgia was around 1 million head. And that surprises a lot of folks. If you stop and think about it, though, the reason we had those numbers back then was everybody had a milk cow.
Oh.
Okay? So the cattle were primarily milk cattle. We didn't have that many beef cattle, in the 1800s, But the fact that everybody had to have a milk cow if they wanted milk. There weren't any delivery trucks that delivered milk to grocery stores. That's only come on in this last century. In the 20th century. But that's the reason. And the other thing that surprises a lot of people is that when you think of cattle country, you think about Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, those Midwestern states in the cattle belt out there, and we've had cattle in Georgia a lot longer than they've had cattle out there, simply because those areas of what's the United States now were not settled back then, and as people settled the plains out there, then they took cattle with them, and cattle obviously are the mainstay as far as agriculture is concerned in those parts of the U.S.
What's the best, if there is, and what's the worst, if there is, sections of Georgia to raise cattle?
In Georgia, anywhere that you've got poultry, cattle work great.
Really?
Cattle combined with poultry, because we can utilize the chicken litter from those birds as fertilizer on pastures. And at today's fertilizer prices, that is a tremendous advantage for the people. Now, if you just go 35 miles down the road where I live, in the corner of Coweta and Troup and Heard counties, there's not a chicken house in Coweta County. There's not a chicken house in Troup County. There's not chicken houses in the very southern end of Heard County. You get from Franklin north, and you have chicken houses. As you come into Carroll County and Harrelson County,
they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. You have
what's the
poultry
reason
houses.
for that?
Well, it's the integrators. They decide where the chicken houses are going to go.
Oh, okay.
You, as an individual that wanted to get in the chicken business, you got to be approved with an integrator that would furnish you birds and feed. So if I wanted to get in the chicken business in Coweta County, I doubt that they would even talk to me.
Well, you mentioned the 1800s. If you can you compare how dependent Georgians were on eating beef back then as to now? I assume it was a much larger part of the diet back then.
I don't know if it was. I don't know. That's hard to say. But we're eating a different type of beef today from what they ate back then. Back then, it might have taken 3 years to get an animal to 1,000 pounds, whereas today we can get them to 1,000 pounds at 10 months, And slaughter weight, which is more like 1,300 or 1,400 pounds, you could, if you wanted to, get them to that weight in 13 or 14 months. But that's not necessarily the most profitable way to do it. So today we've got cow-calf producers that sell a calf off the cow. Then we've got stocker operators. We've got and they put on cheap gain from, say, 500 to 800 or 900 pounds, and then they go from there to a feedlot. So it's a production chain, and everybody's kind of specialized in their part of it. We don't feed many cattle in Georgia. Most of our cattle leave here and go west and are fed in feedlots in other states of the country.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's obviously more cost efficient.
It is, and that's where the grain's produced. We don't have that much corn produced in Georgia. Georgia agriculture is so diverse. We used to think about cotton and corn. When we were row cropping growing up in the 50s, that was our main crops, cotton and corn. And you don't see that in this area of the state anymore.
Well, compare, if you would, 16, 17, 1800s with today in terms of, for those of us who are illiterate on this topic, we think all the food simply magically appears in the grocery store. And so we think that you buy a cow, you put it out in the pasture, it gets big, you sell it. But there's a lot more to it, the veterinarian side, the science of it all. How does that compare today with what they had back in the 1800s, 1700s?
Well, of course, I wasn't around back then, Steve.
You were.
But today is so much more specialized. Back then, I referenced the family milk cow, and usually they probably milked that cow, had milk, butter, and then that cow would, of course, have to have a calf every year in order for her to milk, and probably that's what most of the people ate back then, was the milk cow's calf every year, I know that's the way we did it back in the 50s when I was growing up, and it was my job to feed that milk cow every night and separate her and her calf. If I didn't separate them overnight, there wasn't any milk the next morning. We only milked once a day and let the calf have the rest.
Before refrigeration, how did we store meat?
People kept it down in a well or in a cool spring or something like that. But that was, transportation changed the beef industry. It changed the milk industry. And, back, there's a great story in this book about R.L. Mathis Dairy. Everybody's heard of Mathis Dairy in Atlanta and Rosebud, their cow, Back then, they milked their cows, they bottled that milk, and they delivered it door to door.
Right, I remember that, bottles.
Right, and that's hard for people to visualize today, but instead, I don't guess there's any home delivery of milk that I'm aware of anymore, but they all sell it to the grocery store, so to speak.
Aren't there fewer independent dairy farms than used to?
Oh, so many, so many fewer farms today. As I know, we used to have over 1,000 dairies in the state of Georgia. Now we're down to about 100.
Wow.
The surprising thing is, though, that we've got the same number of cows.
Yeah.
Back then, the average dairy might have been 100 cows. Today, if you're only milking 100 cows, your days are limited, probably.
Well, again, kind of focused on your book, Herds and Heritage. How has veterinary medicine changed over the years?
Oh, goodness. There's another area that I'm not certainly an expert in, but the technology, the science, the actual veterinary work might not have changed that much. But on the other hand, you think about you look at DNA and what it's meant to the cattle industry today, or genomics, all these things. Our science has changed so much. The drugs that we have today, that the antibiotics that have come so far back early on, when a lot of these veterinarians that are retired today, they had penicillin and sulfur maybe, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Today they've got so many choices. It's, gosh, I'm at a loss to even try to get into that, Steve.
Tell us, because we're gonna have to come up on a commercial. What's it like growing up in agriculture? Having a generational family farm. I got a guy I go to church with, young guy. Is going to Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, and you kind of feel like you don't see that as much as you used to somehow. But what is the career path like, and what's the lifestyle like being in agriculture today as compared to generations ago?
I see more young people interested in going back to the farm today.
Why is that?
I think they want to be their own boss. I think they want to work outside. I think they don't want to necessarily be tied to a desk and a computer. The enrollment at ABAC today is probably the highest it's ever been.
Really?
Yes, I'm pretty sure of that. And UGA, the College of Ag over there, the enrollment, I think it is at an all-time high. So people know that the jobs are there in agriculture.
Well, we all got to eat.
Right. It might not be production agriculture.
Right.
It might be selling those antibiotics or growth promotants or whatever that that these people that work in the industry do today. But the production agriculture, those jobs are, I think a lot of kids want to get back there, but in reality, they have to do some other things, because there's less than 2% of the people involved in production agriculture today.
So basically, it's the agriculture's number one industry. Cattle is very high up there, but the number of people actually participating in it maybe not as great.
In production. Separate production from, say, sales or service or working at the local tractor dealer or being a diesel mechanic or.
So do we count all those related activities when we're talking about agriculture in general?
I think you do. Their livelihood, their job is supporting agriculture, or it furnishes them a job. Depends on what you're calling counting.
Herds and Heritage: A History of Georgia Cattle Industry. Now, where can we purchase one of these fine books?
These books are available through the Georgia Cattlemen's Association, and you can call them. Tell them to send you a book, and you send them a check, and they'll drop one in the mail, ship it to you.
So just Google Georgia Cattlemen's
Georgia
Association.
Cattlemen's Association at Macon, Georgia. The number is 478-474-6560.
Good, very good. All right. I'd rather do that than buy something from Amazon.
You bet. You bet.
Our guest this morning is John Callaway. We're going to come back. Got a couple more kind of present day questions for him, and we'll be back with more after this.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
I'm Michael Flynn, Oak Mountain Academy class of 1978.
Katie Flynn, class of 2010.
Justin Flynn, class of 2014.
Logan Flynn, class of 2019.
And I'm Marnie Flynn, current teacher at OMA.
My uncle Richard Orm Flynn, a founding father of Oak Mountain Academy, had a vision to see students become confident leaders who hold a faith-based value system in an academically rigorous environment. We are proud to celebrate 60 years of fulfilling my uncle's vision.
Our family invites you to visit the campus or oakmountain.us today.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. This very special Community Voice. John Callaway is in studio, past president of Georgia Cattlemen's Association, author of Herds and Heritage, The History of Georgia's Cattle Industry. Simply go to the Cattlemen's Association website and you'll find it there. We're also on Facebook Live, and we're very grateful for John for coming in. Present day questions, John. Newscasts are dominated today, of course, by inflation, high fuel prices. Challenges for cattle farmers, I understand, are threefold: fertilizer, feed, and fuel, the 3 F's. So
Right.
how challenging is it today for the cattle farmer?
It's very challenging, and it all goes back to increased fuel prices. I suppose the war in Ukraine was the beginning of that. Just a few real world examples. I can tell you that anything that whether it's feed or fertilizer has to be delivered on a truck today, you know, and those prices are passed right on to the farmer. The farmer doesn't ask prices. He takes what what he's offered for his product and pays on the other end what the price of feed or fuel or fertilizer. As an example, fertilizer last year, I averaged about $90 on my per acre for fertilizer on my ryegrass baleage. This year, it was about $170, almost double. And there's no way that I'm going to come out on that. Feed prices, not quite as haven't gone up near as much as the fertilizer prices, but they're up. Equipment, I priced a new mower conditioner the other day. I bought my old one. I think the year was 2008. It was paid $13,500 for it. Today it's $40,000 to replace that machine. So
We're only going to have a minute. Are we going to have any kind of food shortages, do you think?
Well, I've been to the stores sometimes and seen the shelves not stocked quite as bountifully as they maybe once were, but certainly food prices, obviously everybody knows they have gone up because of, if nothing else, the distribution chain and cost of getting that food from the farm to wherever it's processed and then distributed from there back to the grocery stores. There's no way of doing it without passing on those added costs to the final consumer.
John, thank you for coming in this morning. Very much appreciated. Author of Herds and Heritage, The History of Georgia's Cattle Industry. You can find that book by going to the Georgia Cattlemen's Association website. We encourage you to get a copy. It's a tremendous gift. It's a tremendous educational tool. And we salute you and your 30-year career with agriculture and the Extension Service. Here on WLBB Carrollton.